Hi, math fans. This is Alexis Heller, the curator of On Our Backs, the revolutionary art of queer sex work. And I am super excited to be here today to talk to you about the show, all of the incredible artists and histories that are a part of it. And yeah, let's have some fun. I started my career actually as a social worker, working with queer and trans teens, many of whom were sex workers. And any time that I would see sex work presented in art and culture, it was usually a disempowered narrative. And I know that there is so much incredible history of sex workers leading social justice movements, of sex workers supporting each other, sex workers as healers. And I really wanted to present that history and also, obviously, sex workers' relationship to art. And so that's what I went looking for when I started curating this exhibition. There's also a clear kinship between sex workers, artists, activists, and queerness. Many queer artists have a very deep relationship with the sex worker community, and I wanted to include that support as well to sort of show how the gaze from outside of the community could be supportive and empowering as well. So this first section that I want to highlight is Annie Sprinkle. Annie, from 1980 to 1994, dubbed her apartment the Sprinkle Salon. In that space, she filmed porn films, she saw clients, she had tattoo and piercing parties, had workshops where she helped women both in the industry and not, with these sluts and goddesses workshops where they were able to explore sort of both sides of that part of themselves. She did a ton of photography and art making. She also started Club 90, which was a porn star support group. She started the International Day to End Violence Against Sex Workers. Annie and Veronica started a business where they sold their soiled underwear, and they sold golden showers in these small bottles where it was their piss, and they had little instructions as to how to give yourself a golden shower. It was a really successful business. Annie was very active in safer sex activism, particularly in the porn industry. She worked very hard to convince porn directors and porn companies to include safer sex practices in their filmmaking. Really, she was again, a pioneer of sex art. This work is by Adamu and Khalil West. They are two artists working in London. Adamu is a photographer and activist. Khalil West is a sex worker and also an activist. Together, they decided to create a series called I Am For You, Can Enjoy. It is a documentation of Black male sex workers in London. So Adamu created the portraits. Khalil did one-on-one interviews in people's homes, talking about their experiences in the industry, how they got into the industry, issues of race and client expectations. It's a really beautiful conversation and a really intimate conversation to be allowed to witness. It's not often that Black men are presented or given the opportunity to speak with each other in a way that is public and created by them. So over here is a video by Miss Naughty, and it features Leigh, who is a porn performer and also works with Pink and White Productions, who are featured elsewhere in the exhibition. And what's really amazing about this video is co-created by Jiz and Miss Naughty. And what you're seeing here is Jiz in the bathtub, luxuriating in a bathtub. But what you're listening to is Jiz reading letters that fans have written to them, thanking them for the type of porn that they make, the type of representation, for giving them a space to explore their own sexuality, their gender, for creating empowering porn. It clearly gives Jiz a lot of pleasure to receive those messages. So the installation is meant to sort of mimic a bathroom door being left ajar. As this is set up as a home, we thought that it would be a nice way to tie that in. So this archive was found at the One Archives in Los Angeles. It is the archive of Peter Thomas. It was really lovingly preserved. There were just hundreds of letters from clients, correspondence between Peter Thomas and his family. Peter was a sex worker, well known for his conversational skills, his fisting skills, his safer sex practices. He was living with HIV, and that was also something that he shared with some of his clients, or shared with his clients, but some of his clients who were also positive. That was a supportive part of their dynamic, or a mutually supportive part of their dynamic. But Peter also was an artist. He designed fetish wear. You can see here is a cock ring. He also created clothing, vests made out of chainmail. What I love about just each of these small items, as I said, there were many, many more in his archive, but they really illustrate the complexity of a life. What I love about this section are many things, but first is this large photograph by Efren John Gonzalez. And so here you see a stroll in the meatpacking district, a transgender stroll. It almost feels as though you're there, that you can walk into that space and feel yourself in that environment, and maybe imagine what some of the people who were working there were experiencing. Well, I wanted visitors to the exhibit to imagine that history could also be theirs. As I researched the archives, both in California and San Francisco and LA and Toronto and New York, what I noticed was that certain communities' histories were being left out, or were very, very underrepresented. So, for example, sex worker organizations that were led by sex workers of color. Often I would go looking for them in the archive, and if they were there would be one or two articles in the folder. And I would visit other people's archives, and there would be 30 boxes. It was really important to me that their history, their contributions were not absent from the show, because in a lot of ways they actually have carried the most weight, have done the most work, and really have worked from the margins to make sure that their voices were heard, and that they were working their hardest to raise those who are most on the margins. And so in order to give reverence to their history and to their labor, I worked with Pluma Sumac, who is a sex worker working in California. She creates money altars as part of her practice. She wanted to find a way to combine both her sex worker history and her religion. When I let her know that we were interested in creating an altar that highlighted sex worker activists, she was really excited to then create mini altars for each name. We have a bowl over here for visitors to contribute names or notes or letters to other sex workers in their life that they felt deserved recognition and reverence. And at the end of the exhibition, queer sex workers are going to come together and do a ritual burning of the contributions as a way to lift them up. Live nude genitals, super provocative. It's actually a piece that accompanies Angelo Madsen-Minax's film, which is called No Showgirls. What that film is about is creating a trans gaze. So Angelo is a trans filmmaker who often collaborates with his friends, and some of his friends, or many of his friends, are sex workers. And so what he wanted to do was sort of subvert the idea that trans people, or the interest that trans people have to show their genitals. Everyone wants that, or not everyone, but people want that reveal. So what he created in this film, No Showgirls, is a striptease with a friend and performer that Angelo sort of gave direction as to how the performer should do next. And you never get that reveal. And so live nude genital sort of promises you this thing that you're never going to get. We are at the Leslie-Lohman Museum of Gay and Lesbian Art, which is in Soho, New York. You can visit this exhibition from now until January 19th, 2020. So it's a nice long run. You want to make sure you get here if you can. And you can find more information at www.leslie-lohman.org.